Thank you so much.
Okay, Zev. Oh, we're live. We're live.
It's going now, I think.
Yep, live now.
It's on?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. There we go. All right. Still loading on my page, guys. No, apparently we are live. Awesome. Well,
We are live.
Yep, that's we're live, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for tonight. Got a couple of our guests that are a bit under the pump for time-wise, so we'll get you to go first, Serene. And then we'll hear from Pete, since you guys are under the pump for time tonight, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Zev, for providing these very important platforms for uniting us together and creating the connections within the community that are very, very important at this time. I feel very, very grateful that we are connecting together, especially when in the last couple of months, as a lawyer that has spoken out about what is happening and what we've witnessed, the radical changes that are being brought by states and territories, the radical changes that even today, I've had 1,000 messages come today with what the South Australian government wants to implement, issues around taking children away to quarantine-like camps or, spaces that they want to set up where they take away the parents' agency completely. I'm blown away, to be honest. Every day I'm blown away by the things that are being introduced at the state and territory levels. I'm blown away by what I have witnessed in terms of phone calls. I've been on the phones for the last 4 months, intercepting and assisting so many people who are finding themselves in situations that truly are unfathomable. For example, yesterday, a lady called me in distress. Her daughter's come to Queensland from Melbourne. She's got Asperger's and Down syndrome, and the police has just detained her at the airport and put her in hotel quarantine when her mother is her carer. Things that are phenomenal. I've had to contact the health minister. I'm pleading with the health minister right now, Queensland's health minister. Please get this girl out of quarantine and put her back with her mum. Things that are just beyond belief. A young lady at the border, Adelaide, they let the mother go through in one car, and then they stopped the young lady who's pregnant at 21 years of age, and they wouldn't let her go through. She had to spend 4 days at the border, and I had to plead with the chief health minister to get her to cross. I'm blown away. I'm blown away by what I'm witnessing. People every day calling me from hotel quarantines, from forced vaccinations, childcare, every space. They're not letting them work. They're not letting them see their elderly parents. Elderly abuse. I'm blown away. Elderly abuse in aged care facilities and aged care centres. People are not being allowed to see their families at the moment of their death. I'm blown away. What do you do? How many bullies are there that you have to mitigate? How many fires you have to just put out? And this is about a nation that is now being encouraged to bully each other. When you have laws that are unchecked, when you are saying that in an emergency, anything and everything goes, and all of our processes and all of our laws, whether they're written in the Biosecurity Act or even in the respective public health acts and emergency acts in each of the states and territories, this is not how we anticipate to deal with public health risks. It's an absolute outrage. You don't go around and suspect everyone of being COVID-19. Healthy people are being detained. Healthy people are being asked to test. Families in primary schools and high schools, if someone is found with COVID-19 positive test, so that, the RT-PCR test, it's known that if you are positive on an RT-PCR test, it doesn't mean you're infectious. But every single person who's testing positive is being told you're infectious. It's an outrage. And then what they do is, so I've got many parents called up saying that apparently they've been told that their child has been exposed to COVID-19 and therefore they must be tested. And they won't even give them the contact. They say, oh, contact tracing. Oh, anything goes. Anyone can be contact traced, apparently. But there are prescribed information that you have to provide. You have to let the person know who they were exposed to, allegedly. Airport staff being told, oh, you can't come and work anymore. The whole Qantas airport, Qantas staff being released, like not being told to come back to work because apparently one person had COVID and they won't tell them who. I mean, it's just an outrage. It blows my mind what is out there.
From a lawyer's perspective too, must be rather shocking to see that we've got all these laws and rules and restrictions, regulations being imposed on us, yet those imposing them don't seem to be accountable, or they don't seem to be applicable to those imposing the rules.
Absolutely. It's an outrage. Things that we've added, the contradictions, the hypocrisies abound in every space and in every place. And these people, people are calling me traumatized. Mental health issues are exacerbated. Suicides. Many families have called me up who've lost someone to suicide. Sorry, I get a bit emotional.
No, I totally understand, Serene. You're like, I feel for you because you're in the thick of it and you're the one who's standing up and you're being that voice for these people that have no voice. And, we get the calls, but you're the one who's at the dead end of it at the moment, because what we wanted to do as part of tonight is call out to the lawyers and the doctors and the nurses to step up and have a voice, because there doesn't seem to be enough people right now doing what you're doing and advocating for these people. And when we see the facts and the figures and the death certificates getting changed and the nurses getting coerced to write down the wrong things and the doctors that are speaking amongst themselves, but they're too scared to be deregistered, so they won't stand up and make the noise. And it seems like it's all getting funneled to you and you're getting stuck with a big burden. And we want to say on behalf of all the people in Australia and Victoria, thank you, because you're doing so much to help these people and you're coming from a place of love and sincerity and care.
Absolutely.
But you've got such a big burden at the moment. So, I can hear it in your voice.
I'm very grateful that a lot of people are reaching out. It's also managing that level of, input that people want to have genuinely. And I know, but I obviously, like thousands of messages on my phone, I can't keep up, but obviously I have to prioritize, for the case. And we want to launch. We're so close now. We're looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, launching our class action. The issue is the end to end. I'm looking at the end to end of this process. When you have a state of emergency declaration under the law, you have to ascertain a significant health risk. And there has to be honesty in the narrative. There has to be honesty in the words that we use to describe things. When we say this is a deadly virus, we are being told a lie. A lie. Language is very important because it creates the fear-mongering and then it creates the perception. Undoubtedly, the biggest killers remain in our society: the cardiovascular disease, cancer, and respiratory disease. And God knows how many people have died because elective surgeries have been stopped. Okay, goodness me, how many people from mental health issues. And then, let's look at the process. Why are they so desperate to put COVID on the death certificates?
Payouts.
So what is this? We're heckling? Are we in a heckling process? The doctors are heckling for COVID-19 to be on the death certificate when you've got comorbidity of diseases, terminal cancer, diabetes, or cardiovascular disease, when people have been suffering from these diseases for a long time. Let's look at the statistics and line up the last 5 years and look, are our ICUs any more higher than they were in previous years? No, the answer is no. Let's look at influenza statistics and pneumonia statistics.
Oh, you only have to look back to last year. 3,000 people died of influenza and pneumonia.
Absolutely.
The year before was 2,900. The year before was 4,000.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, influenza apparently disappeared in Victoria. But guess what? The influenza statistics in Queensland and New South Wales, equivalent to this year, apparently they're more. Queensland has more cases of flu than Victoria's cold weather.
Yeah.
Sunny Queensland has more flu apparently this year than Victoria. How is that right? Well, all of a sudden the influenza knows at the border, oh no, we can't cross the border now. Influenza says, I can't cross the border. Okay, this is where influenza stops and COVID starts. Where is the honesty? You're talking to doctors like they've got no it's logical fallacies that they're talking about. Completely dishonest. And it's in their own statistics. It's in their own data. Australian surveillance flu statistics, you only have to look it up. This country knows how to monitor itself, and therefore you can't ignore a lie.
And I think those ones that aren't stepping up and saying something, if you look at the facts and figures for every 3 deaths from COVID, it looks like there's 2 deaths due to COVID. So whether that's the elective surgery, the suicides, so there is blood on these people's hands. They really need to look and do a conscious check, have a look inside, do a gut check and say, I need to step up right now. Like the time is now to step up and do something and say something. It can't be all to you, Serena, because you're taking too much of a load at the moment. But we need people to step up now and do that gut check.
Yeah, and I'll say something. Where are all the experts? Where are all the professionals thumping their fists on the table and saying this is unacceptable? If you think for 1 minute they're not coming for you, for your businesses, for your jobs, for anything you have built in terms of your property and in terms of your bank accounts, don't be under any delusion that you are protected.
Serene, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And I've asked this question to a lot of people. Where are people like you, like the lawyers? How come more lawyers haven't stepped up to form an alliance or to form a group for the people? Is that something you're working on?
I can't work on other lawyers who are morally bankrupt. Okay, I can't work on other lawyers that have no conscience. Okay, I can't work on an industry that has become infiltrated by privileged rich kids. Okay, most of them come from privileged rich backgrounds. Okay, I have only a handful. I've been going at this for months, and I'll tell you what I get from other lawyers: criticism, put downs, insults.
You're the only one
I
doing
get
it.
from other lawyers. That's the disgrace of our legal fraternity that is populated by entitled rich kids who've grown up not understanding. All the larger law firms, they've all got deals with the government. Do you think that they have the audacity to stand up, or they're worried about their government deals? And the small suburban local law firms, you know, this is not their expertise. Administrative law, public law, constitutional law is not their expertise. But all those that do have the expertise are working for the larger government department and for the larger law firms or the middle class law firms. Mute or critical. Oh, I didn't know about this opinion, Serene. Maybe this opinion is better. Really, you're all screwed. We're all screwed based on what's happening right now. Yeah, because people don't want to open their eyes. It's cognitive dissonance. They're so upset about this. But, you know, I've been at it, investigative. I've been doing a lot of, not just as a lawyer, I've been doing investigative journalism in many ways. Gathering the data, gathering the information, looking at their own websites, looking at the end-to-end process. How do you report COVID? How do you assess it? Hospitalizations, how do you codify it? How do you clinically diagnose it? And then how do you report it at death point?
Yeah.
And it is from the end-to-end process, it's corrupted. And this is by their own words. This is by their own information. And then you just have to look, as I said, match up the statistics. You don't have to be a genius to go work out something is not adding up here. And then when you have families, and you have Troy on the line today, and I'm his lawyer, you know, and you know, when you have families who've been traumatized with the death of a loved one, being patronized, being told COVID is the main death, the main factor, and the families are having to negotiate, going, no, that's not true. This is not true. And the doctors are like, no, I don't know. We think so. We think so.
Yeah, I've heard that too, Serene. I've got a couple that had people in palliative care, two people that are wanting to talk to you as well. I'm sorry.
No, and I want to gather this data. This is actually critical data, because when you declare a state of emergency, you're declaring it based on your death.
Yeah.
Now, even on the best case scenario that they've got a causal fatality rate. Now, what's a causal fatality rate? It's a rate that's calculated based on your diagnosed diagnosed with the listed human disease, in this case COVID-19. Now, we know that they're diagnosing wrong. We know that they're saying you're infected as soon as you get a positive test. That's not how it works. TGA and even their own information says you have to do it through clinical diagnosis, but their codification is saying right away, as soon as you get a positive, you're suspect COVID. Everyone is suspect COVID. Apparently, if you have a cough, you're suspect COVID. If you have a bit of sore throat, you're suspect COVID. What is this? This is encouraging all sorts of things, and let alone the empowerment of the police and the AFP and ASIO and all of these organizations. They're being empowered by laws to say that you can just enter homes and enter property and enter this and enter that. And they're choking and they're hating and they're coming at people and they're, it's just so disproportionate. But coming back to that end-to-end process, we've worked very hard to get the statisticians and the experts at every point, whether it's the RT-PCR test, experts in that, and the data in regards to the collection of how do you read those tests and what do they actually tell you. Codification, as soon as you enter the hospital, if you have COVID, you're given probable or suspect COVID. And that codification goes through. And then they say, even if you have another condition, even if you have a major comorbidity of another condition, or that you've been sitting in the hospital before all of this and you just happen to test as COVID positive and you die, they're going to put it on you as COVID death.
Yep, Serene, we're a bit under the pump for time.
Sorry,
Serene.
So my apologies. But as I
No,
said,
you're right. Love the passion, Serene. It's great to see. We need more like you with that kind of passion, especially from the legal profession, as you so eloquently put, that are completely bankrupt and void of any kind of emotion or spine or balls to do anything about it. So I hate cutting you off there.
I want to say one thing to the experts. Come forward. Come forward. You know who I'm talking about. To the experts out there. Stop being scared. Everyone is scared. Everyone is operating from a window of fear. Let go of your fear. Everyone knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Okay? Leonard Cohen, the song, everybody knows. We all know it's a corruption to the extreme. Yeah. We all know it, everybody inside of them. I'm saying to the politicians, I'm speaking to the lawyers, I'm speaking to the experts, I'm speaking to the professionals, I'm speaking to the business people. Get up, do something. This is your fight. This is your chance to get up and take ownership of the fact that our politicians and our bureaucrats are morally bankrupt. They've sold our land to overseas interests, to foreign interests, Chinese government, transnational companies, CEPI, and these overriding organizations, to technocrats, apparently that call themselves philanthropists.
Well, I'm really hoping, Serene, that your passion rubs off on a few other lawyers. So if we do have some other lawyers watching this is what we want to see more of, you lot.
Yep.
People with some passion and a spike.
And take ownership, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm because a lot of people go, oh, she's anti-vaccine. All of a sudden it's a write-off. I'm talking about our rights. When you have a ailment or a disease, you need to be fair in terms of your assessment of it. Okay, the laws talk about assessing it from a significant health risk. Is it a significant health risk causing significant harm? Causal fatality rate of 1.38% is not significant. The law itself says you can't eliminate that risk. There's always going to be some element of risk. It's about management, but you don't go shut down an entire country. And not just that, you shut down the smaller businesses, the middle class businesses, but you leave the big businesses open. What is this virus thinking? Yeah, big business, I'm fine. I'm not going to attack you. Small business, yeah, no, that's where we're going to operate.
But Serene,
yes.
So we're under the pump time-wise.
Yes, sorry, that's enough for me. Yes.
Are on some solid time constraints. Again, love the passion and really hope it rubs off on some other lawyers.
Thank you.
No, Pete, you're under the pump and so's our anonymous artist. So I just want to hear from you guys quickly before we run out of time to hear from you two. If you can stick around.
Thank you, Serene.
We'll get back to you and love you to spread some more passion for the other lawyers.
We love you, Serene. Thank you so much for being you, and I'm looking forward to many others joining the
resistance.
They need to step up. We need to step up, that's for sure. I won't speak for too long, but thank you for having me, and hello, everybody. What can I tell you? I've had a background in food for a long time, and what I've seen in that industry as far as health goes is major corruption. We're all aware of it. In the past, we've seen our government health authorities have been in bed with multinational food corporations, and it's been exposed over and over and over again. We created a film called The Magic Pill a few years ago to share in some of that information, and we all know that that has happened. So when this virus came along and people put their faith in the government and the health officials, and my biggest question so far has been, how come in 6 months not one health official or government official has talked about building a beautiful, robust, healthy immune system when this virus is meant to attack our immune system? That to me just makes no sense whatsoever. Well, it makes a lot of sense because if it was about health, then there would be answers and solutions. And just to give you my own perspective, over the last 6 months, I've been interviewing some of the world's leading doctors that are outspoken in this, such as Dr. Buttar, Dr. Shiva, Robert Kennedy Jr., many, many others from Australia, New Zealand, and parts of the world. And the first thing they speak is common sense. And what their common sense is, how do we build a healthy, robust immune system? And they take us through it, and they actually explain, how does the cytokine storm happen in somebody? How do viruses, how do they work in our bodies, positive and negative? And it's a pretty simple formula. Like, it's a really simple formula to build a healthy and robust immune system. And I've questioned that over and over and over and over. When is somebody going to come out? And the strangest thing, and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but the only person in power that I've seen do this is Donald Trump. He's actually talked about zinc. He's talked about sunlight. He's talked about these things, and he's been ridiculed for them. But if there's so many doctors out there that know, functional medical doctors generally, because they have a greater understanding of health and wellness than the local GPs, and no disrespect to them, but it's just that they've furthered their education to encompass more knowledge in which they can help their patients achieve long-term sustainable health results. So in saying that, I'm still waiting for somebody to come out and say, hey, you know what, this attacks the immune system, so why don't we all look at reducing inflammation in our body, the first one, and look at the pillars of health that we can all, each and every one of us, can do today to be our best versions of ourselves. And that's been my message over the last 6 months, is to encourage people to be healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And we all know when we're out of alignment, how do we bring that back to alignment? Because when we are physically, emotionally, spiritually strong and present, that's how we can change not only ourselves, but our environment, our community. When we're sluggish, when we're overtired, when we're eating the wrong food, when we're drinking too much alcohol, you name it, we're operating at a level or a frequency that isn't vibrant. So my message is, let's get ourselves into a position of empowerment in body, mind, and spirit, so that we can face each day embodied, so that we can think critically, we can think clearly, we can take the correct actions instead of reactions, plot a way forward in which we can move this narrative. Now, I've said, if everybody in the country switched off their news, switched off anything from mainstream, removed the fear, and exhibited their most authentic self, we would have nothing to worry about. We would have zero to worry about. And in fact, by doing that, we could actually change their health system in a couple of months. I've proven it, and people that I interview, we've proven it. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people improve their health through some simple methods. Now, the reason that I do not trust our health officials, and I'm very open about that, is because this information isn't a secret. It's so easy to do. Yet, for decades, they haven't encouraged anybody to do it. now, in reaction to a potential threat of a virus, which I'm not fearful of in one at all, not for myself, not for my family, not for anybody. The reaction has been actually to keep lowering our immune system. Put a mask on. We know that lowers our immune system from science. We know that social distancing lowers our immune system because human interaction is what builds a healthy immune system. We know that staying indoors and not being outside lowers our immune system. So closing businesses down, not being able to leave our homes to see our friends and family lowers our immune system. Fear of financial insecurity and uncertainty lowers our immune system. So it seems to me, with a common sense point of view, that what the government and the health ministers are doing is actually lowering our immune system on purpose instead of offering solutions so that we can stay healthy individually and as a community. And that's probably all I need to say right now. And that's, you know, some people might call me wacky for that, for that philosophy, but
for that common sense.
It's fucking common sense, and apologies, but I'm over it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
not
that's
very,
so well
very
said.
common.
Yeah, I think you sort of nailed it on the head on all those points, because, you know, we're watching people who usually people that I know, people who like out and about in my community, who are usually vibrant, beautiful, happy human beings, coming from a place of fear, and they just don't look like the same person. People I haven't seen for a couple of months, I see them now and they just look like a shell of themselves, because they're eating from Uber Eats, they're not exercising, they're wearing a mask all day, every day, and you're just seeing their soul, their body and souls floating out of them. And if they did get hit by even a common flu, I reckon they'd fall on the ground now, because their immune system just can't be working well. So I think what you said is pretty much spot on.
Well said, mate. We might just throw to our anonymous artist here, guys. There's
Thank
someone
you.
who's done a fair bit of work in TV and film. Because I know you're under the pump for time.
Yeah.
So
Thank
we'll just
you.
call you our anonymous artist. Thank you very much for joining us. And love to hear your 2 cents worth, so to speak, on all of this. And floor's yours. Go for it.
Zev,
I
I'm
know,
really...
Pete, sorry, if Pete, you need to run, you go. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Pete.
You're a legend.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me here. Pete, you're a legend. Thank you for all your sharing. It's been really inspiring. I'm myself, yes, my work, my profession makes me a professional feeler. So I'm an actress and I work in film and television, and my whole life really revolves around my own empathy and my body. So I literally listen to my body, and I've become confident in being guided by what my body tells me. And I use that in service of character, in service of the stories and the films I do. And I'm here, and I don't want to be anonymous, but I am about to start filming a film. And I do need to be careful about being outspoken, because you can get dropped from charities, you can lose campaigns with car companies, all these things happen, like at the drop of a hat. And for having, which have happened to me in recent times, for speaking out. So I feel I feel careful, and I don't want to elicit any aggressive, threatening responses from anyone. But I feel 100% called to speak to this topic, because this topic, what is this topic? It's about speaking the truth and shining a light on the reality of what's really going on. And deep in my heart, I I give everything to believing in the good in humanity. I've thrown my hat over the fence. I believe in humanity, and I believe that we're magical, amazing, living, embodiments of spirit, and it's amazing what we're doing here. But yeah, it's also, there's a certain level of agenda and darkness that has had authority, and that has had a lot of people in just believing lies. And for me personally, I started hearing things like this from doctors in California when I was living in Hollywood, and I just would hear, just little drips and drops from like amazing doctors who went to Stanford and then stepped out of the medical industry because they felt it was, from their experience, it was corrupt. And this would go on, and I'd keep meeting people, and I thought it was crazy. I thought it was madness what they were saying, and then a few days later it would come back to me, and I'd realize, no, it's true. So all of what they were speaking about is what we're facing right now, and I do believe, I do feel, or I
was just
observe
cleaning
that
up
the more
after
loving
painting.
that we are, the more intelligent we become. And so when we are in fear states, it's really, we just follow what we're told. And I again, what else do I want to say? I just want to circle back to something Pete said about Trump, because I watched a very interesting video just today that a friend sent me, and it was on YouTube, and it's, is Trump a light worker? And he's just such a divider. Like, I literally left Hollywood because he came into power. So I was not at all on the fence about him. I just did not like him. And then this particular YouTube clip just is fascinating, and all the information that comes out when you actually look at what he might be doing is pretty fascinating, and just mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah. So what else can I say, Zev?
Can I ask you a quick question? Are you guys through the industry with working in media and film and TV? Yeah. Are you specifically asked or requested not to speak or share your views publicly? Is there anything that you're sort of requested or slightly implied not to do so, or it may affect your work habits, or is it just sort of the way it is?
Well, it's not like there's, I did receive an email from the council asking me to do a video for the community to stay home, like a stay home video because of COVID. And at that time, it was probably a couple of weeks in, and I saw that there was all these other great people that were doing it. And it was that kind of, it's that sort of thing where you can get looped in without realizing you're being looped in. And it was such a short video. So but no, generally not really. It's more, of course you can speak out, but I think also maybe those with really strong conscience or strong integrity will not just easily sell out. So I don't think they're as easy to manipulate, So I haven't found myself in that many situations where it's like that, but I've certainly navigated some very, very interesting rooms and Met Balls in New York and Hollywood blockbusters, and been in some very interesting spaces. But again, I also believe in synchronicities, and that we and divine timing, and in humanity. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but does that kind of answer your question, Zev, in what you were.
Yep.
Yeah, kind
I
of.
think faith in humanity is paramount for all of us at the moment with the current scenario. We're sort of being pitted against each other in this divide and conquer style strategy, and we've got to have some faith in humanity and stand united. There's no other way forward. So spot on,
Yeah.
spot on.
Yeah, and within ourselves as well. Like it's a clean up your own room type of situation. So our own shadows are going to get highlighted as well as the shadows in the world, as within, so without. So I do feel it's really it's essential in this journey that souls on this entire planet are going through right now, is we need to clean up our own room, and then we can help others and, shed light on what's going on for others as well.
May I say something here as well?
Yeah.
May
For sure.
Thank you so much. You've got a very healing and beautiful voice to the artist. Just gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
I have to say something. It's very important. We must not be afraid to show who we are and show our identities. I am representing many doctors and nurses and people who are coming to me and saying, please, I do not want to show who I am, but I will support you. And I'm just saying, it's not to, I understand, but I do believe very importantly that we must show who we are, that we must not be afraid to unite together and reveal who we are. I'm representing,
Absolutely.
I'm actually representing almost 200 healthcare practitioners who I promise them I will 100% keep them anonymous. But my frustration is this: I need to show them. Like I respect them.
Yes, Serene, I
but,
really do.
But I need those voices. It's not just me. I can't protect you. I can't shield you from the attack. We all have to rise, and we all have to not be afraid to reveal who we are and to truly speak and to say, no, I can see who you are. And the only thing that separates me from those that choose to make me believe that I should fear them is my fear. Okay.
Yes, that's so true. I really hear you on that, Serene, and I really appreciate you speaking to this,
I'm not
because
criticizing you. Please understand.
No.
This is not from a window of criticism. This is from a window of love. I'm saying these people only have the power because they've made us believe that there shall be consequences. You see, even the police officer who's wronging another person, the very high corrupt official who's wronging another person, they're human too. When they see us rise and say, no, we will not be abdicating in this manner. We will not allow our liberty and our dignity to be suppressed by what you're telling me you own of me. Okay.
Serene, I feel like your message.
I'm the owner of my own destiny. And I don't care. Give me liberty or give me death. That's what I stand by. And if we all say, give me liberty or give me death, there shall be liberty and there shall never be death.
And so it is. Thank you, Serene. I really do hear you. And I literally said to Zev before I came on the call that if this film wasn't about to shoot next week, that I would show up, and it is actually quite tied to what I'm working on.
No criticism, please. Okay, and this is about those who are truly influential. Okay? I'm saying the doctors, the nurses, the people who can make a change, the people who know what's going on. Okay, speak out. I've had.
We might throw Serene.
Sorry, I will stop.
I'm freezing up.
And I have to say, I'm so sorry. I have to leave. I love you all. Thank you. Please join the class action when we launch on Tuesday. Love you, Troy. Okay, I'll speak to you guys soon.
Thanks, Serene.
Bye.
Right, thank you, Serene.
Lots of love, and to you.
I was just gonna put out one thing that I've picked up over this last week, and that's I don't know if the artist formerly known as someone else wants to talk about it as well, but we're getting a lot of comments. What's happening is in Victoria in particular, there's a bit of an upscale at the moment. So the fear factor has gone through the roof. I tend to talk a lot about the similar things coming from a place of love, vibrating at a high level. Because we're going in and out of lockdowns, we're sort of on a roller coaster. So we're up high, then we drop low, come up and drop low. And what it's done is it's inbred this feeling of helplessness within the community. And the people that I'm talking to just want people to stand up for them. And I totally understand where you're coming from with the film coming up and everything else as well. And there are a lot of people that are sort of speaking up in the background, and they will come out and talk when they're ready, when it fits into their lifestyle as well, because we all have to be mindful of our jobs and our livings and everything as well. And I think one of the big concerns that people have is about vaccinations. We've just been talking about it in the last week. They're looking to put vaccinations into some of the nursing homes around Melbourne. And I think vaccinations are a thing that people get scared about, because we want, as a community, and Serene was kind of touching on it before, with anything, vaccinations, 5G, anything like that, we want to be able to have pro-choice. It's not about anti this or yes, we'll do that. We want to be able to make choices in our life. And I'm guessing when I go back to you, the artist, you're about that kind of thing in your life as well, that people should be able to have choice.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a given.
Yeah.
I might just, guys, because we're pumped for time to not draw this out, how much time have you still got, artist, or are you on the clock at the moment for us to come back to you?
I've probably just got another few minutes. But you
Right.
probably want to
just,
speak more with the nurses and the doctors, right?
well, I'm just going to say we might throw to our lovely nurse X that's been very patient and waiting, particularly with Matt touching on the vaccines and stuff. We'll get to you very soon, Troy. Sorry to have you on. And if you've got anything you want to say too, Troy, just pipe up, mate. And you've sat there I'm patient.
Yeah, I'm just happy to listen. That's no problem.
All right. Well, look, Nurse X, do you want to do a little quick intro? We'll go with our Master Agent X up the top in a minute then as well. But might go to Nurse X if you can unmute yourself and just do a little bit of an intro and fill us in on some of the info you were filling me in on when I spoke with you a couple of nights ago.
I've just come here. I'm a quite senior nurse. Probably tonight just wanting to let people understand a bit about the culture. I'm seeing a lot of people bagging out staff in the hospitals, and I think a lot of people don't actually realise what happens in the hospital. And what I've watched happen probably over the last 10 years, there's a very ugly culture in there. That culture is, if you have a good idea or if you speak up, you basically get your head chopped off. I'm seeing a culture where nurses who are maybe a little bit outspoken, nothing radical, are getting pushed out of jobs with no references and actually being pushed out of the profession. It's pretty nasty. We are trained from an early age not to critically think, which is pretty scary when you think about what we do. When it comes to vaccination, we have no training. We are told basically it's necessary. People who refuse it don't know what they're talking about, and that these children will die if you don't have it. There's no training. There's no training on the side effects. We don't even know how to educate people on the side effects when they're vaccinated. Do I see vaccination reactions? Oh, yeah, but we're not allowed to talk about it. The other thing I was talking about the other night that people don't realise is PCR testing. So people are under this false impression that PCR testing tests for a virus. So things that you need to know are, one, this virus has never been formally identified. So basically, you can't test for something that's never been formally identified. The other thing is how PCR testing works is it doesn't actually test for a virus. It tests basically for a trace of the DNA left behind from a coronavirus. The maker of the test is quite clear when he says this is not to be used for diagnostic purposes. Now, we've been using these tests for several years now for viruses. I've never been instructed to use them in the way that we're using them currently. We're actually causing trauma to people with the testing. I'm not sure, Zev, is there anything else you really want to talk about?
Well, look, yeah, I wanted to touch on the certainly. How you guys are talking with the vaccine, the stuff you were filming this in on the other night about nurses being shut off and speaking to each other. Maybe a little bit about how that culture is starting to change amongst the profession, and the fact that you guys who are trained in ICU, etc., aren't getting. You guys aren't getting shifts. And if we're in a pandemic, you'd think they'd be putting more of you on, not sacking you for your views on social media.
Yes, well, we are warned not to speak. We are warned we will be counselled. I'm ICU trained. I have not had a shift for 4 months, and I'm in Victoria. So I have lots of colleagues in the same position. The general public are under the impression that our hospitals are overwhelmed. I have never, ever seen our hospitals as quiet as they are now. Within these hospitals, you can be working side by side with people who agree with you, but you would never know because you know not to ever talk about it because it's divided. You never know who your friend is and who your enemy is. Even though we have casual banter on a daily basis, you cannot voice these views. If you vaccinating an unwell child, you are automatically called an anti-vaxxer. You learn to go about your job and to not say anything. People are under this impression that nurses are free to speak. They're not. And those that are awake won't speak, and a lot of them are asleep. And I can tell you they're sound asleep, and they have been well brainwashed for a long, long time on how to behave at work. They won't, if you talk to them, they would look at you in surprise. They don't even know it's happening. It's subliminal. So I'll hand you over to Zev.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Nurse X. Well, if you're sticking around, we'll come back to you for a bit.
Zev, can I just butt in for 1 minute, just while we're talking nurses? Sorry, guys. I spoke to a nurse yesterday from a hospital in the Mornington area, and she was very similar in what she said with the robotics of the nurses there and the inability to speak up. They had a palliative person in their patient, and that patient tested 3 times for COVID. All 3 tests came back negative. They still got put into the COVID ward because they come from a nursing home. On the morning that they were about to pass away, the family came in to say goodbye. The family had to wear full PPE equipment, masks, shields, gloves, the full equipment, while they said goodbye to their loved one who tested negative 3 times. They never got to kiss or touch or feel the person's skin again before they said goodbye. That person then passed away. The nurses spoke amongst themselves, saying that something's really wrong here with what happened here. The next day, the family came in and spoke to the doctor. 2 of the nurses tried to speak up and got shot down by this doctor and told not to speak up or they would be deregistered. And this nurse is just too scared to speak up at the moment. Again, probably going to go through the serene route, but it goes along with what Nurse X said. There is a lot of fear out there for speaking up. There's a lot of that cognitive dissonance that they're stuck in this culture of doing everything in a certain way. But what I want to say is don't be fearful of speaking up, because if you don't speak up, and it's a horrible thing to say, but you really have these deaths and these blood is on your hands. You need to find that voice to come out and speak now.
Yeah, just to our Nurse X, you guys, you must see a bit of this sort of stuff in your industry and where you work as well.
Yes, and I've had a little bit to do around some of the testing, and I won't go into any detail. Identify me, but what is happening in there? There's a lot of lies going on. Organisations and they have no to lie to you, but there's a lot of lies that are coming out. these are government organisations, and they are sticking with the government narrative. So
Is this to do with the comorbidity rates as well, as we talked about the other night?
is that
Sorry, I'll just do that so we don't get the echo on you. We were talking the other night too about the comorbidity rates. We might bring Troy in at the end of this one. This is something a bit close to your heart here, mate. But Nurse X was filling me in a little bit on the morbidity rates and the comorbidity rates and how these numbers are being fudged quite heavily. If you wanted to just enlighten us a little bit on that, Nurse X.
yes. So what you may hear in the paper, then they're not that a lot of these infected people they're in hospital for completely other reasons, and they're dying for completely other reasons, but they're being counted as COVID deaths. There's a lot of lying going on.
Yeah, and I must agree that I'm getting the same thing through my inbox in my Instagram. Probably again 3 or 4 different people's families, including Troy, that are saying that they're having loved ones that have got, one had lung cancer and hepatitis C, and yet COVID-19, he got put into the COVID-19 ward straight out of the nursing home and got marked down as a COVID death. They contested it with the doctor then changed it. Now, usually a doctor won't talk to a patient backwards and forwards. So even the fact that that is happening is not, for me, the ethical practices aren't happening here. There's a big cover-up of sorts that's happening. And I guess, yeah, like Zev said, this is a good time to speak to Troy. If you want to have a bit of a chat and let us know what happened with your uncle, Troy.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just want to pull everyone in, Troy, and let them know a bit about your story, mate, for those who haven't seen you all over social media already.
Sure thing. I mean, I don't even know where to start. So my uncle has, sorry, just give me a second. So my uncle had terminal cancer for a number of years, and there's a lot of other pre-existing conditions that he had. He was in a nursing home for just almost 2 years. Now, before I get into the story, I just want to encourage anyone that has a similar story like mine, feel free to, send me a message. I'm happy to point you in the right direction, and Serene will definitely look after you. I can assure you that Serene is a true professional, and she certainly made me feel comfortable, especially after my video coming forward. And I had a conversation with her before the video and also after the video, and she's been really great to deal with. So I strongly recommend, if you're not comfortable, I'm happy to keep you anonymous, and we'll have a conversation and try to encourage you to come forward. But so my uncle, terminal cancer, and he was being in palliative care for 6 weeks. So palliative care, for anyone that doesn't know, you're obviously on your last legs. My uncle had 3 tests done for COVID, so the PCR test. The first test came back negative, the second test came back negative, and then the third test came back positive. The positive test came back on August 7th. This was 4 days before he passed away. So he passed away on August 11th, just for everyone to think about the timeline. Now, the doctor, thankfully we have a recorded conversation from the doctor with a phone call with my mother. And the doctor had a conversation with my mother in which they spoke about the cause of death, really. The number one thing that obviously caused his demise. And the doctor's opinion at that point in time was that it was COVID-19. My mother obviously disagreed with that assessment, given the timeline and the history. And it is of my opinion as well, if someone's got terminal cancer, like, what does terminal mean? Terminal means that it's pretty much game over for them as soon as you get that announcement. If you're at stage 4 cancer or even stage 3, I'm not too sure how it works for different types of cancers, but this is a man who was 72 years old. His name was Errol, for everyone that is wondering what his name was. And he was a great uncle. He really did a lot for us, and he's a very big family man. And I'm sure that a lot of people can probably understand what it feels like to lose a loved one, and not just to lose a loved one, but obviously to cancer. And in some ways, it was a good thing that he passed, because he had such difficulty just living. To put into perspective, this man wasn't eating solid food for 12 months. So he was not eating solid food for 12 months. This isn't a man that was ready to fight. He was on his deathbed. He was dying. And, much to the they're obviously, I don't even know where to go from here.
Yeah, Troy, I mean, it's a hard time as well. It's not far from, and our thoughts are with you. You've just lost your uncle, obviously, and it's a lot to go through. It's a lot to process with what happened with the conversation with the doctor and everything else. And I think what you've done is really courageous in stepping up and talking about this, because, you know, if you think about this, what's happening here is we've got a virus that is really 99.75% of people are recovering from this virus. Of all the testing getting done, 0.4% are testing positive. But when they find someone positive, they contact trace that whole area to get as many tests done as they can to fill this narrative in, to do the lockdowns and the masks and everything else. And what we've found as well in our research is that hospitals, and even, I don't know if the doctors are getting it individually, but the hospitals are getting paid for every COVID case that goes through and every bed that's used for COVID and every ventilator. So it's disturbing to know that your uncle, who was already unwell, obviously very unwell, a common flu, the seasonal flu probably would have hit him just as hard as anything else. The fact that he tested negative twice, it makes you wonder if it was just his time. And the fact that your mum had to go through those questions on the phone, it's morally wrong. And the fact that you're speaking up, for me, is one of the bravest things I've seen. I think in such a tough time for you and your family to come out and do this gives that voice to all these other people that are thinking, well, what's happening to me is wrong as well. Since you've done it on Instagram, I've had 3 people step up and do the same thing. So, and we're going to get them in touch with yourself and Serene, and, you know, the action will happen from here. But what I was hoping tonight is that we can encourage other people who watch this, who think that something's not quite right, like what happened with you, to step up and speak as well.
Definitely. And I also want to make it clear, this is an interesting fact. So tested positive on the 7th of August. My mother got a phone call on the 8th, so she's the power of attorney as well. Now, with this phone call from the head nurse, she was told that my uncle was asymptomatic. So I find it very, very curious for all the listeners that, you know, a man that has terminal cancer, this is lung cancer, by the way, so obviously respiratory issues. So you'd think that COVID would, if anything, like logically, would be an issue for a man that has cancer with a compromised immune system, wasn't eating solid food, 6 weeks was in palliative care. This is a man that was asymptomatic. And I find that concept very difficult to believe as well.
Yeah, there's definitely big holes in that narrative. And I think, as you said, people hopefully will get in touch with yourself, myself, and we'll funnel it through to the right places. And again, I just wanted to thank you, Troy, for speaking up. I think it's, as I say, very courageous, and I hope you still find the time to grieve with your family and, you know, don't put too much time into it, but we're all here for you as well.
I appreciate that. And I also want to quickly say that, you know, I was very, very nervous to come out and do that video. And I can assure you, to anyone that might be listening, who might be considering doing the same thing, I felt so much better for doing it, because it wasn't just about, you know, my mother, my family. This is about all Australians and about what we're all going through. And I'm for the people that don't know, that I'm in Melbourne as well. So obviously for the Melbourne or the Victorians, we're in phase 4 lockdown, and it's important to get this information out for people to understand what's going on and that you're not alone. And I'm scared, but I still did it anyway. And I think it's important that we all support each other, and I'm prepared to support anyone that wants to stand up and that wants to share their voice and have a strong voice, have a loud voice, and have the courage, because courage in my opinion is an act of really doing something when you're scared. And I certainly was scared the other night.
No, it's amazing. Thanks, Troy. Back to you, Zev.
Hats off to you, mate. One, for going through what you're going through and being brave enough, one, just to face the fears, and 2, to come out and do what you're doing publicly, mate. That's hats off to you for doing that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We might throw over to our Agent X, who's been quietly waiting and cleverly disguised and hooded up here. And just a bit of a rundown for you guys. Agent X is a bit of a military background. He'll fill us in on a few of his observations. He's down in Dictator Dan land, otherwise known as Melbourne at the moment as well. If you just want to share through there a few with us, mate, some of what you've been noticing, maybe like you were talking about before from your training, what you've noticed with the aircraft, other activity, and what you're seeing and noticing. The way you were talking earlier, mate, about the way you're dealing with it, you're trained for this.
Yeah, definitely,
It
mate.
is-
So, Zeph, thank you very much for reaching out to me and getting me involved in this. A bit of my background. So I served for 10 years in the military. I've had 2 tours overseas in Afghanistan. So I'm well aware of military tactics and the type of warfare in regards to psychological warfare and propaganda. For me, it works on both levels. It's 50-50 emotional because of my background, how I grew up here in Melbourne, Victoria, and also because of my background in the military. So I have a very similar situation and a story to Troy with my grandfather. He passed away during the first wave, and same thing. He was used as a guinea pig. They tried to treat him as a COVID patient. We had to go there on his deathbed and wear full PPE gear. And they used him as a guinea pig, just nasal swab after nasal swab. And it felt like they actually wanted him to be positive for COVID to push that agenda. So right there, it hit the suspicion button for me. From there, I started doing a little bit of research on how the virus originated. It said that it came from a bat, or there was a possibility that it came from a lab in Wuhan. Now, it seems that the Australian public has forgotten that where the virus has actually originated from. It seems like everyone in Australia feels like Victoria is the main cause of this, and we're the ones that are spreading it. And just to go back on what was occurring in the world events, Iran was currently going through riots. Hong Kong was going through riots. Italy and France were going through riots. They had the yellow shirt movements. And then once this pandemic came into place, it all stopped. So obviously it turned quite political. Also from there, when the shut. Sorry,
That's
mate,
spot on. 2019 was the biggest year of protesting ever in the world. So you're really spot on with that narrative as well.
So yeah, just once I started seeing that people actually standing up against their governments and wanting a change, then that psychological fear just came in because the government came up and created this scamdemic or whatever they wanted to use just to scare the public into saying, hey, they've hit you on an emotional level. Everyone is possible. So it's a silent war. There is no more combat war. It's not a physical war where people are walking down the streets with guns or they're dropping bombs on the streets. Now it's a psychological war. You know, there's a silent enemy. There's this silent killer out there where now everyone is the enemy. Your family, your friends, you know, anyone walking down the street. You've got this paranoia now that anyone could be carrying the virus. And with this, like, I'm no epidemiologist, but asymptomatic to me it just sounds quite suspicious that someone that's fit and healthy, that, you know, wants to improve their immune system, is now punished for going outside and getting vitamin D, or, you know, getting fitness, or just being with their family, as was stated by some of the other people. From there, once the shutdowns came in, I started noticing, because of my background, I'm very observant, and I started noticing a massive rollout of 5G towers just popping up all throughout the entire city, in the CBD, in the western suburbs. So it started, I'm not a firm believer that it is causing the virus, but it just gave me some sort of suspicion that there is an ulterior motive going ahead. So for it to be rolled out under the cover of COVID and be popping up where no one can protest this untested technology popping up in our city, it was quite suspicious for me as well. So the more research I'd done, it just started uncovering certain things into where it was coming from. So Wuhan was the first place that rolled out 5G. And then I started looking into the politics behind that. So with Dan Andrews, his ties to the CCP, his ties to the Metro Tunnel, the Westgate Tunnel, all the railroad movements, Cedar Meats, all this stuff started setting off light bulbs in my head saying, well, hang on a sec. Well, Victoria has been a democratic country for a very long time, or a state, and all of a sudden we're just getting used by China. Everything, all the steel has come from China. John Holland was the contractor that has been employed to do the Metro Tunnel and the Westgate Tunnel. And they were actually purchased by a Chinese company back in 2015. So right there, that's more suspicion. And also the steel that was used in these tunnels was from China. So if you're looking at what's happening in China right now, the Three Gorges Dam, they're all collapsing due to rushed materials and rushed labor. Also, it's quite a concern. Yeah, there's
Are you noticing too, mate, sorry to cut in there, but from the military you guys are obviously trained in strategy as well as various other tactics. Are you
That's
seeing
correct.
a bit of the divide and conquer strategy here on the people, so that there is, you know, the government powers that be don't have to do the fighting, they're pitting the people against the people?
Exactly right. So divide and conquer. A lot of people forget that this is not just Australia. This is a worldwide pandemic. It's not just Victoria that is in a state of lockdown or in a state of pandemic. I think that a lot of people are very naive, or a lot of people have never read a history book in their life. They forgot about the Holocaust and how Hitler was able to achieve what he did with the Aryan race. It was a propaganda campaign. He bombarded the Germans and just telling them they were superior. They were superior. He used radio. He used pamphlets. He used speeches. And this is what I see right now. Our government, what they've employed here in Victoria, especially through the CBD, you can't go anywhere and escape it. There is posters everywhere. Every time you turn on the radio, it's COVID. Every time you watch the TV, it's COVID. Every time you walk into a shopping center, they have maintain your social distancing. This is COVID, COVID. And this has been going on for 6 months. The brainwashing it's just absolutely phenomenal right now. And people don't realize that because they are living in a state of fear. We have Stockholm syndrome. It's ridiculous. Like, this is the
100%.
biggest psyop that I've ever seen in my life.
You were talking too, mate. You again with the training and being trained to be a bit more observant of a few things there. The extra aircraft you've been noticing in Melbourne, maybe you could fill us in a little bit on that, what
That's
you've been
correct. So,
noticing, particularly at night time.
So I've got a lot of friends that are still currently serving, a lot of friends that are ex-military, and people that are working for the police force in other states and in this state. So I'm getting updates constantly on what's happening around us. I myself have broken curfew many of times just to get a feel of they call it the signs of life. So I've put myself at risk. I've been called up a few times by the police for breaching curfew and not wearing a mask, just to see what their standing operating procedures are, their line of questioning is, their intimidating tactics, and to also see what they're doing under the cover of night, because that is definitely a military tactic. While everyone's sleeping at night, the enemy's going to be out there and they're going to be setting up defensive positions or setting up positions where they can attack, you know, their enemy. So with the aerial pursuits, the helicopters is another tactic to instill fear in the public. They're flying constantly over suburbs, circling and circling and circling. I've heard like high aeroplanes flying overnight with no lights. And this, you can, like, because of my background, you can tell the difference between a normal aviation flight or a Cessna towards like a military drone or a high aviation. And with another thing that I'll mention is the police budget. So they've had a $3.2 billion budget in the state of Victoria with an extra $3.2 billion of expenditure. So over the last couple of years, we've had a decrease in crime. So for any budget to continue, you need to justify the spending. And with that, if they can't justify it, they will lose that budget. So to me, it just rings alarm bells that they're constantly flying over police choppers, using all their assets, having the police out there 24/7, because the police are becoming obsolete. No one's committing crimes. Everyone's doing the right thing. And we are being vilified for, you know, spending time with our families. So it's quite concerning.
So very, very much from your background then, mate, a bit of a military tactic for the purpose of spreading and causing fear, and
That's
for
correct.
the purpose of dividing the people to pit them against each other as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I would agree as well, again, that when those towers got locked down in Melbourne, they were running fire trucks and ambulances past there at night time. A couple of times I followed them, they drove the block, went around the corner and turned off their lights and sirens. So I think there is a lot of that tactic of instilling fear in people so they'll get the testing done as well.
Exactly right. So, and it's the same with the media, what they're doing every day. They're just bombarding people with fear. Like, it's Dan Andrews has become the spokesman for COVID. Like, in a normal circumstance, they're like the resources that have been used. Just imagine the taxpayers' money that's going into the advertising on the radios and all the propaganda that's being used to instill fear in the public of Melbourne and Australia, because it's social engineering and it's social conditioning to think that this is normal. It's definitely not normal.
Yeah, and it's leading towards a state of full surveillance, and it's leading towards a state of mandatory vaccinations. The fact that they're saying you won't be able to travel for 2 years, you're going to have to wear masks for 2 years, is setting people up psychologically so that when a vaccine comes out, they'll line up for it.
Exactly right. And people have actually gotten quite upset with me that I've compared the Australian Defence Force and the Australian Police Force or Victorian Police Force as Gestapo. And I've read a lot into history of their tactics and what they do, and it just goes hand in hand. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's the slow erosion of our rights until there's none left at all. And it's not until that point where there are no rights left that everyone goes, hey, what happened to our rights? Well, they've been eroding them slowly for a long time, guys. It's crunch time we all united. We didn't buy into this fear BS.
Exactly. And it's so un-Australian to rat out your mates. You know, you're meant to be like, I served for 10 years. I fought overseas for on 2 tours, and that's mateship was you're in the trenches with your mates. You know, the Anzacs, the traditions, the rats at Tobruk, the diggers, that mentality, that mateship, that, you know, you're there to stand by your mate regardless of season, weather or terrain. And right now they're turning us against each other. They're turning you to the core level of being afraid to visit your own family.
I think you're spot on. I've put up posts like that myself about the Anzac spirit. Like, I spoke to an older man the other day who wasn't wearing a mask, and I said to him, "Why aren't you wearing a mask today?" And he said, "We didn't fight in the wars for our freedom to die as a slave."
Exactly right. I'd rather die standing than live on my knees.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Better to die on your feet than live on your knees. And many of us are with you 100% on that.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming on, mate. And and speaking out and just giving people a bit of feedback from another perspective that many wouldn't probably have access to hear it from a military background, a perspective, a different viewpoint, different angle to look at things from. So
definitely, I'll touch on one more topic before I leave. So I'm guessing a lot of people have watched Agenda 201. So they planned for this. This is to me, it felt like it's during the first wave. Yes, I personally felt that this was quite serious. The way China portrayed it, the propaganda that they used to instill fear in the Australian public. I took the bait. I definitely did. From there, I started to really realize that this wasn't right. This was definitely turning into a scam, a pandemic. And after watching Agenda 201, it really put things into perspective. They planned this as a military operation, and they have said and stated that they will collect all the data of what's occurring. This is what we call in the army an after action review. So at the end of all this, they are going to accumulate all the information that they've acquired over the last 6 months, and they will submit it to the powers that be, and they'll say, this is how the people complied. This is how long they complied for. This is where the resistance was. This is what, different types of certain things. This is how transportation worked. And they're just going to continue to try this until they've perfected it.
Well, last quick one for you there, mate, while we're pushing it for time too much. Any info or intel you're able to be forthcoming with regarding the Rowies that any of your mates have forwarded on to you?
So the one that was quite concerning was some people, a lot of the soldiers coming from interstate. So right now the Defence Force or the Army personnel, Navy and Air Force, they are actually trained medics that are conducting the nasal swabs. They have currently flown in a lot of CFAs from all around Australia. CFAs are combat first aiders. These guys are unqualified and they are not medical practitioners. They are going to start conducting the nasal swabs and testing people for COVID around Victoria and around Australia. And also these medics in Australia are quite concerned about these combat first aiders flying in without the qualification, conducting these nasal swabs.
Yeah, and our ROEs that you guys have been all
at the moment. So the rules of engagement at the moment, they're unarmed. So they're just here.
What an ROE is?
So ROE is a rule of engagement, and SOP is the standard operating procedures. So every soldier's briefed on this before they deploy. So they're currently under the Operation COVID Assist, and they've been directed to just assist the police force. They haven't been given any directions to detain or restrain anyone, but within my experience, these ROEs and SOPs can change overnight. All they need to do is receive a set of orders, and within overnight, they could be armed and patrolling the streets and restraining families and conducting mandatory vaccinations.
Well, there you go. So a bit of inside intel for everybody. And MJ and Sergio, these mates of yours, are they?
Yes, mate.
All right. Well, if you guys want to speak out a little bit, anything you'd like to put forward from MJ and Sergio, feel free, guys. Now's your chance.
Yeah, I think this is my first Move conference, Zoom conference. So I think I just try to let them know what was occurring. I think they've just joined randomly. So
That's all right. Well, look, for MJ and Sergio, if you guys want to have I'll flick you a little ask to unmute. If you guys want to come on and have anything to say, please feel free. Some more intel is always good to get different perspective from a point of view that most civilians wouldn't have access to. So again, mate, muchly appreciate you coming on and having a chat with everyone tonight, and just to
no worries.
give that different viewpoint that most wouldn't have access to.
Thank you. Stay safe, guys, and thank you. I appreciate it.